everybody. We were initially a group of 5, myself and the vice chair are more on the listening side of the ad hoc committee. So I attended one yesterday and I was on the listening side to hear the good conversation that was happening around the work that they were doing. So right now, just to kind of reiterate, initially it was going to be Dr. Good, Elsa Batista, Jen Delaney, Jenny Graves, and Shannon. It sounds like Rebecca has requested to only work on the other one as opposed to 2. Absolutely understand. So we have 4 folks on this particular ad hoc committee at this time. So having you come, Shannon, was great because that allows us to keep quorum and have more than 50% of the membership at the meeting so that we didn't have to defer the meeting. So thank you. My responsibility right now is really just identifying who would like to chair this particular committee. So between Elsa, Jen, Jenny Graves, and Shannon, who would like to chair this ad hoc committee?
Can I just, can you call the meeting to order, please?
Oh, sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry. Calling the meeting to order at, we'll say 3:35 because I talked for about a minute there.
Great.
Welcome everybody again. I'm very excited about the work that you guys are doing, clearly. And wondering if any of the 3 of you would like to chair this committee.
I'm not interested. Sorry.
Did Dr. Ritchie say she was going to be able to attend?
She did accept the invite.
Okay. All right.
I typically would very much enjoy that. I'm in the middle of writing a dissertation, so I'm not sure how much more I can put on my plate. But we'll see how it lands. If it's no one else can truly do it, I might be able to fit it in because I do want the work to get done. But that is why I'm not jumping to it right at the moment. Not to say I wouldn't do it in the future.
Shannon?
Yeah, I'm on both committees, so I'm just a little mindful of capacity as well and being realistic about things happening. I'm also on my Board of Ed and it's budget season, so things are a little hairy right now.
It's tricky right now, sure.
Yeah, so we'll see what that 4th person
maybe Jenny?
Dr. Ritchie might say, and then between the 2 of us, maybe we can figure it out.
All right, so for right now, I will act as the chair until we get that solidified. Is that appropriate, Chloe? Okay. So the work of this particular group is on the repealed regulation for section 12A, 1 through 6. CEPRL did a nice job of kind of like identifying those different areas. I'd actually asked them if they could kind of condense down to exactly what other specific areas might be affected by the work of this as well, which I can forward to the group after the meeting because we weren't able to give it to you before the meeting, so that way it's public. But we're really much tasked with by July 1st, 2025, coming up with the regulations around this. Chloe, could you bring up this section of the legislation and what it entails?
Yeah, let me just pull it up. Sorry.
No worries.
Got 2025 on the brain, so it said this bill didn't exist. So it's like, I know it does. Okay. Okay, section 12.
A 1 through 6.
So this is the first part. This is section 12A, 1 and 2, and then I can make it bigger if needed. Is that big enough for everyone?
It is for me. I also have it up on my screen.
Okay.
You too.
So the evaluation criteria that will be used to assess proposals for local or regional boards of education, regional education services center, and educator preparation certificate programs. Let us know when you want to scroll up if anyone needs it to read the rest.
I feel like we just need to go one by one and just try to make sure we're understanding what every single one means, you know?
Yeah.
The second I start getting into like the third, fourth, fifth thing, I'm thinking already, oh, okay, this list is getting long. Let's just make sure we even understand all of it, what it entails.
So the SDE report gave us like a really quick summary of it. So I can go into kind of the summary and we can look at the actual language. So go back up to 1, please.
I like that idea.
Yes.
Yeah. So on the report that we got from SDE, which was presented at our very first meeting, was the, for one, it's evaluation. So 12A1 is evaluation of criteria for proposals for alternative pathways from initial to professional cert or endorsement. So let's read what the actual language says. It says the evaluation criteria that will be used to assess proposals from local or regional boards of education, regional educational services centers, and educational preparation programs for alternative pathways for educators to progress from an initial educator certification to a professional educator certification, or to be issued a cross endorsement that will enable such educators to teach in content areas or grades beyond their initial certification areas.
Yes, so to me, that means, and I need help making sure that I am understanding what that means in implementation, right? So to me, that means that we're looking at alternate pathways and we're looking at all of the different programs that can, or the entities that can help someone get a cross endorsement or go from an initial to a professional. Evaluation boards of ed, regional education service center and educator prep programs. So when I'm thinking of local regional boards of ed, obviously when they sign the paperwork that the teacher has done XYZ to be able to pass on to the go from initial to professional, right? So that's usually years of service, things like that. Then we have regional education service centers. So that must mean like CREC and ACEs, et cetera, because they also have school systems where teachers serve. That's my understanding. But then also ed prep programs, because ed prep programs maybe someone might be in a program that helps them to cross endorse to another certification, or they took coursework that takes them from that initial to the professional. So that is what I am understanding. Like in actuality, like in implementation. Develop standards and proposals for regulations. So what is it that we would want to regulate in that domain? What alternative pathway are we talking about, right? So I think that is, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's the work of the other ad hoc group, is talking about the alternative kind of like pathways to certification. I will say that when I asked CPRL to provide me with kind of like what specific within these things are repealed or what have you,
Yeah.
they stated that no repeal regulations address subsection A1 as the possibility of developing alternative pathways for educators to progress from an initial to a professional certification or to be issued a cross endorsement had not previously been contemplated within the Connecticut policy framework. So it's not something that's being like repealed necessarily, but it sounds like they're saying that I'll read it again. No repeal regulation address section A1 as the possibility of developing alternative pathways for educators to progress from initial to professional certification or to be issued a cross endorsement had not previously been regulated. I guess my question would be, we would probably ask SDE, what are those current pathways, right? I'm thinking the master's program is one of those pathways. So maybe we get from SDE the information as to what are the current pathways that are being used to move from initial to professional, right?
So what are the issues they see come up? You know, what might be the barriers that we could solve on this committee that are preventing people from going from initial to professional or to getting a cross endorsement?
So why don't we right now take a second to type into the chat any questions that we have for SDE so that Chloe can write it down.
Good idea.
So take a minute, and this will be specific to 1A of this, right? So, or A1, I should say.
Yeah, A1, you're right. Section 12, A1.
Yeah, will an appropriate question be, am I on speaker? Okay. Will an appropriate question be the evaluation criteria? Does one exist already? And if not, do we create? What template will we use? So I guess a question would be, do we have a current evaluation criteria?
Well, there isn't the current requirement the master's degree. So if this is really speaking to alternatives to that I think if I remember this one was a little more fuzzy, like I'm trying to remember the council last year and how we were thinking about this. And I think there was a lot of pushback on the master's degree being the only way to advance from initial to professional. So now we have an opportunity to start fresh, think totally differently about what would be the criteria by which you'd show that you've moved from an initial level to a professional level. Master's degree could be one of those things, but there could be other. What I don't really understand is what would be happening. Would this be so open that local school districts, RESCs, and ed prep programs could all just propose different things? Like it could be a whole range of different options, and then the CSDE needs a method by which to approve that as a new way to move. And how many of those would we want to, like, how restrictive do we want to make it? Do we want it to be permissive and a lot of ways could advance it, or keep it a little more narrow so that it's got a little more consistency and standardization across the state? But that this does not exist yet, as far as I'm aware. I mean, other than the master's degree, which is in and of itself its own criteria a little bit. Like there's a memo on master's degrees and what counts as a master's degree.
So currently, what are the current criteria? Are there any alternatives? Are pilots happening? We were new to learning about bridges as part of our board when presented to us to show that what is needed to move from initial to professional. I don't see anybody else's. Do I get to see what other people type in there, Chloe, or is that something that you are seeing only? Oh,
I was trying to listen, so I wasn't typing, and I just typed it in now. That was one question that I had. Current criteria, other alternatives. Yep.
And just know that there is no path currently, or there hasn't been a path from initial to professional because provisional was in the middle.
Right.
So we got rid of provisional. So there is no This is like a whole new
Yeah.
thing.
Mhm.
And right now, like where does team is a stepping stone in this too. So does team mean something different in this new streamlined step situation where there's just 2 steps as opposed to 3?
So I'm actually wondering, what is SDE doing for those students who are currently, like, without having, we don't have the provisional anymore, right? So without having the provisional, what is the expectation? Are they just doing what they were doing before? So to move from a provisional to, sorry, professional. So many P words right now. Provisional to professional. What is the current expectation for those candidates while
Just
we're
gonna-
figuring this out?
Yeah, gonna look it up. I don't
Because
have it memorized.
Does anybody happen to know how many years the provisional existed? I'm curious as to what led them to implement it, and now what caused it to be removed.
So the committee, which is now the board, had a lot of discussions around trying to get rid of barriers for our new educators. And one of them was getting rid of the provisional, as it was just another stepping stone and more paperwork, right? Because to go to from provisional to professional was really just filling out a form and possibly, writing a check to cover fees. So we were trying to streamline the process a little bit more. Is pretty much is where it was at.
Okay.
So we've got some good questions there. I think somebody said they were looking up. Were you looking up, Jen?
Yes, I'm looking up.
So then it says,
not finding it very quickly.
It says here, for teaching endorsement to advance from a provisional to a professional level educator certificate, you must complete at least 30 semester hours of credit beyond your bachelor's, not necessarily a master's. Is that something that we can maybe demonstrate, show credit hours in your content area or within education, and not limiting, opening it up to more than just a master? Would that be something too wide?
No, you were able to just do credits. It's just that most people, if you're going to do that many credits, you're going to do a master's program.
Yeah.
That's it wasn't that you had to have a master. Like, you could have a second bachelor's, you could have it in any way, shape, or form, but you had to have that many credits. And then people were leaving the profession. Like someone that I know personally too, people actually, they decided, like, within that 11-year span that it wasn't going to be financially worth it to continue because they started in the profession later. So they could have stayed in the profession for probably 8 to 10 more years until retirement, but they were forced out of the profession because they didn't want to spend the money on a whole nother, 30 credits, whether that's a master's or another type of way of getting a another type of degree. But that was a big issue that was happening for some of those people, And so that would contribute to losing teachers. So I know I'm just looking for in my email.
I know there was some conversation last year with the committee as well. And Shannon, you were on the committee with us, weren't you? Yeah. Yep. So there was some conversation too around just getting rid of the idea of requiring a master's. You can certainly, there's still incentive to get a master's within each district because there's a level of pace movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
But do we require a master's, or do we say a bachelor's is enough currently, and you can stay within that initial and an unlimited amount of time, and also offer the professional for those who move on to getting 30 credits of additional credits? You know what I'm saying?
You make a good point, Jen, because that was another reason why a lot of people went for the masters, because then they could get a pay increase too. Yeah.
So there's definitely still an incentive there, but also just to
Mhm.
master your craft, right? You know, to
Yeah.
continue to take classes and to master your craft as financially feasible, you know, to you as a person. Whereas like there can be an undue burden to folks who feel like they have to begin a coursework within 5 years of getting a contracted position, right?
Yeah.
So there's also kind of like that conversation around that. Do we consider a master's is required or not requiring a professional? I'm not sure if I'm kind of like, I'll soften the language that I'm typing in here because I was just trying to get it down so I wouldn't forget it. So being, let me see.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, a point of clarification. So the way it was there was, you know, usually team was completed in 2 years. You had up to 3, and
Yeah.
that would move you from initial to provisional.
Provisional.
Then provisional to professional was then the master's degree was
Yeah.
sort of the guidepost, and that you had up to 8 years, I believe, to move.
Yeah. I think you had to start within 5, but complete within 8, right?
Yeah. So the 11-year, you could up to have 11 years before you would get to to professional. Now we've taken out that middle step. So I think we can start fresh from like, what are the things we think signal the continued professional development of an educator in their career continuum that moves them from this initial to professional, so that professional means something and has like a value that everybody kind of unifies around and understands. Like as a professional, you get this, and then I'm sure it's tied also to collective bargaining agreements, right? And so I think that we have some kind of opportunity to be creative. Like, do we want to keep team? Is team a step in that process? Do we want to keep credit hours? Do we want to keep master's degree? Or is there a mix and match of like 2 of these 3 things you have to do or something like that? You know, I think it could be creative to still embody that spirit of flexibility that we were going for, but not totally wild west of like, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, 100%.
I like that flexibility and choice. And also, would there be a time frame from initial of what, let's say we say team or get a master's, you move on to professional. Is there a given time frame that we want to add to this? Or can somebody stay in limbo at an initial? No, it's not limbo. At an initial for X amount of years and be okay with what they're making?
I mean, I think that would also, I think, and I mean, this is just kind of me just spitballing here. I think that, you know, one of the biggest things that came up over and over again was the cost to our aspiring educators, right? There's a level of cost and timeliness to getting your master's degree and also completing team while working and those kinds of things. I would suggest that you get your initial when you graduate and you pass your content area, or an alternative route that we find to certification, right? That's being worked on with the other one. And then should they want to gain a master's, that would lead to the professional certificate.
Many will end up doing that once they get in the experience.
Right. I would probably lean in that direction. But again, it's really up to the board and this group as to what they think would work best for certification. You know, the whole idea of like modernizing it and making it more flexible and more attainable for a diverse group of educators is where our mind is at.
Yeah. So I think so that's what I was looking in my email for. There was I had an email from somebody and I just can't find it right now. I'm sorry. I'll look for it for the next time, where it kind of broke down these changes. But what you're describing, Jen, is the case. So now we have to look at are there, like what Shanna was saying? So what you described is what is the case, but now, like what's already in place, but now what we might come up with that could be an alternative pathway to getting your either cross endorsement or your initial, or your professional. And I've been kind of thinking about the cross endorsement piece of it, because sometimes so from my perspective, I run ARC, right? And I'm a graduate of ARC as well. So you at ARC, every single person before they start ARC has passed the Praxis 2, everybody. So that's an entrance requirement for us because of the pace. There's just not time to study for and try to pass that during our program. It's very, very accelerated. So this way it's a guarantee that when they finish, they're already done with that and they'll get certified, right? So it's a guarantee for them. So to me, so what happens is, for example, we had someone who was a dentist and they wanted to change professions. And they actually loved all things family and consumer science. So that person went and took the Praxis 2 for family consumer science and passed it. Okay. So when you can do that when you're getting an initial, but then when you're doing a cross endorsement, sometimes there's like a lot of coursework you have to take to cross endorse. So if we're weighing so heavily the Praxis 2 on whether or not you know the content, then why not have that be a larger measure for cross endorsement as well, right?
It is for shortage areas, so you can pass
some shortage areas, yes.
But they've expanded it, so it's been actually it's fairly expansive. What cross endorsements can be acquired through passage of Praxis 2 alone. So we could broaden it. We could make it so that it's right for any endorsement. I think it was limited at the time just for the sake of like prioritizing shortage areas.
Status. Yes, absolutely. The other thing that I think of with cross endorsement is like some of the things that are not on there, I believe, and we could pull it up, but off the top of my head, like bilingual or ESL, and I think ACES runs the ARC program for those. So that's a nice alternative pathway that's also a teacher prep, right? Because if you're already a teacher, I believe the entrance requirements for that program is you have to already be an initially certified teacher, and you have to be working as a teacher to do that program. So I'm wondering if there's like another way we can come up with an alternative pathway that isn't so credit heavy, that you can cross endorse without having to do that program. Like, I think that's the only really option other than going and getting a degree so we'd have to look at the details of these things, but those are some of the things that are coming off the top of my head. Like, what else could we make a little easier to cross endorse? Go ahead.
So would the question be then to SDE for clarification? And I'm just spitball here to make sure that I understand. Would the question be, what ones are currently cross-endorsed because they were expanded to just allow for a praxis to get your cross-endorsement, right? So those are not credit heavy, it's just a praxis.
Right.
Which ones do they see or that they would recommend that could fall into that same realm? Right?
Yeah,
and it might be
that would be. Yeah, I think that would be the question.
So I'm going to type that back up.
Because if I'm already initially certified and I'm working for a certain number of years and I've proven that, like a past team, I'm implementing all of the new learning that I learned in my Educator Prep program, and I'm doing well at work and really implementing these things and becoming a stronger teacher and working toward, being more of a not a novice anymore. And now I want to cross endorse. Maybe we set a number of years on it of successful experience, and then you can cross endorse a little easier. That's what I'm thinking. Because
Yeah,
then what
I-
happens is these shortage areas open up, right? And like people will call us and they'll say, school districts will call us and they'll say, hey, for example, like when history became, which I never thought we'd see in our careers, right? And history became a shortage area and people are calling us, hey, can we get, now that it's a shortage area, can we get people certified in history? And we can't do that on the drop of a dime. Like you have to create a whole program and all of that. And so there's accreditation. So people are there's definitely people out there who could easily take that praxis and switch and fulfill that. So that's what I'm thinking. Maybe that's one.
Chloe, just to make sure that we don't lose some of these links once we get off of the call, could you copy and paste them into like the notes or something so that we're able to access them later?
I
All
still
right,
have
thank you.
access to the chat after the fact
Okay.
because I'm the organizer. So I was planning on just putting it in a document as well.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Mhm.
Appreciate that. Just so we don't lose
Yeah,
some of
and-
this really good stuff.
This is a link just to the existing prep programs in the state that have been approved, and there's only 3 cross endorsement entities. 2 are RESCs and 1 is a higher ed institution. So
Yeah,
it's pretty
I think you're
limited.
talking about, is it the ESL,
Yeah.
the library media? And is it early childhood? What's the other one?
No, there's Albertus Magnus is remedial reading, and then
Yeah.
ACES is the what is it called? The TESOL and the
Yeah, the
bilingual
Artel.
and the
TESOL. Mhm,
yeah,
yeah.
Artel. And then the correct one is special education.
Yes.
And
okay.
When
Yep,
I was at the
yep.
department, we were trying to get Learn to start a special education cross endorsement. And they weren't interested. Like there also has to be like an appetite on the part of the ed prep program or the rest.
Oh yeah, it's
to want to take this on.
a huge
because it's
undertaking.
got,
Yes.
like if you build it, will they come? Like you
Yeah.
could build this whole expensive program and then you don't get the interest. So,
Right.
But I think it's a small piece of like consideration to think about these kinds of programs and how to. There are districts now offering cross endorsements, which is not on here. Which I'm wondering how that's something I guess for the department. That was not happening when I was there. So what is the approval process for district cross endorsement offerings? Because Hartford Public Schools is offering, I want to say like the 047 within the district or something. Like it's weird. I was like, how are they doing this?
I'm typing what you're saying.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
we
Jen-
both did it.
Jen
Jen.
got it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question because I haven't tapped into learning about that at all. And I'm curious how how it could be different from because, well, I guess because it's a cross endorsement, but even still, like all teacher prep programs have to meet the CAPE accreditation requirements to prepare teachers in any field. So I'm very interested to learn more about that and how we might be able to tap into that.
I think cross endorsements are exempt from it.
Okay.
I
Interesting.
think I'm just this is all like fuzzy. I was
I know
at
it's
the
all our
department
questions,
7
right?
years
Yeah.
ago, so it's
Yeah. I only deal with well, actually, I don't even deal with initials. Technically, we give a 90-day certification. So, and I know that we'll talk about that later, but we're initial prep that only gives a 90-day cert. I don't know I think there's one other maybe program in the state that ends up with a 90-day cert, but we definitely are the ones who do the most 90-day certs.
So in the interest of time, I think we have a
Mhm.
lot of really good questions and we should probably
Yeah.
ask someone from the certification realm to come to our next ad hoc meeting on this so that we can discuss this further. So if that could be added in there as well, Chloe, that'd be great. So it sounds like we may be leaning towards, in terms of the initial kind of things, we might be leaning towards initial tied to certification, praxis, or alternative route. Professional having a master's degree requirement, but the initial having no time limit. If you want to sit in initial, you might be able to sit in initial. But if you want to move forward and get a professional, then there are other reasons that might aid with that as a potential. Then we're also asking a lot of questions to SDE about cross endorsements,
Mhm.
certification, and all those kind of things to kind of wrap our heads around what we would recommend moving forward. Does that sound accurate?
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
I think so. Yeah, it's a good summary.
Okay. Because then we can kind of present that at the Monday meeting for conversation. Go ahead, Shannon.
I was just gonna say, I think we did a lot of research on the master's degree pros and cons too. So if we could unearth that, I probably have some of it from last year.
From last year.
And this was a big debate back when it was introduced because it came online in 2016, I think. And it was out of EPAC, which was the Educator Preparation Advisory Council, established in 2012, set in motion this idea that the master's degree was a requirement. And there was huge pushback, and it went back and forth, and it just kind of finally got over the finish line. And then when it came to our office to implement it as a policy, we basically, I will tell you, we watered it down as much as possible. Like, we made it so that any master's degree could essentially count, so that we lowered that barrier as much as possible, but it's still a master's degree and there's still a cost that's associated with that. So I think the research is showing that there's not a direct correlation between having a master's degree and improved, efficacy, but what would be something else, like that or something else? So but I know we have tons of research on that we could draw from.
So, Shannon, could we ask you to pull some of that research in preparation for Monday's meeting?
Yeah, I'll look into that for the our full board meeting. Are we going to bring that, or?
We can certainly just discuss it and have those materials ready should they ask for it, in case they want to review it moving forward. If that's feasible. Otherwise, we can just kind of talk based on your experience and your wealth of knowledge, having worked for SDE in the past and being a part of that. But Chloe, could we pull the notes from the committee last year that talked about the master's degree?
Do you mean the council?
Yes, from the council last year. Would you be able to access those notes?
I can try. I was not at the department.
Okay.
Yeah. I only started a couple weeks before this group.
Oh, nice.
So yeah.
I would have never known.
But yes, I can see. Let me ask a couple folks and see if I can do that, because I'm not sure. Was there an administrator for that group?
Yes. I mean, Jonathan was kind of the one who was running it for us, but I think he's moved on.
Okay.
But there should be a folder somewhere.
Yep. With
all of the resources and the notes from that somewhere, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I can get access to that.
Great. That'd be awesome. All right. And then, so we're at 4:13 right now. I just want to make sure that I'm honoring everybody's time. The other part of the 1 through 6 was number 6, that CPRL stated that there was no repeal regulations that addressed this subsection.
Okay.
So just because we're talking about the fact that both of these don't really have a repeal on them necessarily, to kind of wrap our heads around for that. It says that similar to repeal regulation addressed subsection A6, however, section 10-146H of the general statute, which remains good law, requires the Department of Education to report to the General Assembly annually on the quality of teacher preparation programs leading to the professional certification offered at institutions of higher education in the state. The report must include, but need not be limited to, it's pretty much data, survey, retention rates, measures for assessments, and data relating to that. So what we can do is at the next meeting, we can pull that 10-146H and take a look at what it currently says, since it's not being repealed or part of the repeal, and see if there's want to recommend to that, or if we want to keep it as is.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea. Pick that apart a little bit.
All right, so for the next ad hoc committee, we'll need section 10-146H. of the general statute is what it's referencing. And that is directly tied to A6 of this, of 2441. Because what I'd asked CEPRL was, can you identify the exact sections or legislation that is directly affected by what's in 1 through 6? And that's what they pulled for us. So
Okay. So A6 is the design and development of a statewide data dashboard that enables longitudinal monitoring of educator workforce data. Okay. We have kind of something a little bit like that because we have to report to CAPE on this type of data of our graduates, specific to our programs, and we actually have to do a lot of work in Standard 4 around keeping in touch with our graduates after the first 3 years after they leave. And one of those things is measuring their impact on students and things like that. And Title II reporting, where we have to report, how many people were enrolled and how many graduated and how many are in the field. And so this is something that the state helped us out with and launched last year, something very similar to this. Mm-hmm. So I think it's that one will be an easy win because we already have something like that for teacher prep programs on Ed's site.
Yeah. So section A2 and A3, where it's pretty much saying alignment of degree from EPPs and endorsement codes and adequacy and relevance of existing endorsement areas. So that part is being sunsetted. It's section 10-145D through 444, and then through 10-145D-150 that are directly related to this. So we would want to take a close look at that and see what it currently says. Okay. And if there's like a model to work off of, adjust, change, or replace entirely. So okay. We'll have those ready for the next meeting as well then, if we are all in agreement to do that.
Mm-hmm. Jen, you said 10-145?
D. 10-145D as in dog through 444, and then through, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. It's 10-145D-444 through 10-145D-150. So it's really 444 through 450 of 10-145D.
Okay. And we don't have that with us currently.
No, we don't have that currently with us. And yeah, so what we'll do is we'll have that pulled so that we can send it to the group so that we can review that in anticipation of, and that would fulfill A2 and A3, the work around that. Mm-hmm. And then for A4, that's also a repeal section. And I believe that is, there's a bunch in here. It's like 10-140. Let's go with the 2 and 3, because I feel like that's going to take up a lot of our time. And we'll prep the next section just in case we get to it, which is 10-145D-9 through 10, that we should want to look at as part of that. So, and I'll forward this, like I said, this CEPRL document, which really breaks down each section and which part of the current statute is affected.
Yes.
So look at it as well as part of that.
You're talking about the repeal memo, right, Jennifer?
It's the repeal memo,
regulatory repeal memo.
So I actually got them to make it smaller for us and make it more specific to 12A. Which is what we're working on. And I had one made for 13.3 that the other group is working on. So we didn't have to kind of look through that whole repeal memo to try to figure out which statutes. I asked them to pull exact statutes that these are being repealed from. So we can look at the original language and kind of move forward with that.
Perfect. Yeah.
Chloe, am I allowed to share it with them at this time if they put a motion for me to give it to them now?
I'm not positive, but I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, unfortunately.
Because I know in one of our other meetings, there was like an updated version of the CPRL document with like yellow highlight, and somebody had motioned to submit that or allow us to view it during the meeting, even though we didn't receive it in advance of the meeting. So that's why I was just trying to figure out if that would
I
still
mean, I
apply.
guess in that case, that's probably fine. As long as it pertains to, I mean, yeah, that's why we kept the agenda so vague. So I think that as long as it pertains to the part of this public act,
Mhm.
and
So if I-
it could be part of something that this group is voting to report to the full committee, then I think that that would probably be fine.
So let me email it to you now so it comes directly from you to this ad hoc committee.
Got it.
Perfect.
I need a motion actually to have that sent as part of this meeting, and then a second.
Okay,
and a-
sure. I make a motion for Jen Rodriguez to email the document we all need to see in preparation for our next meeting.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Looks like we're all in favor, unanimous. All right, I'm gonna send it over right now. CPRL document. For 12. Because I think I sent you the other one already, right, for the 13 group, because they had it as part of their meeting on Friday, I think. All right, so let's see.
So this new doc is more targeted of what exactly this group is doing from the regulatory repeal memo. Just keeping all my documents straight.
Yes, so it speaks
All right.
directly to what
Awesome. Love it.
legislation aligns to it and everything.
Love
So
it. Thank you for preparing for that. That's really helpful.
I just wish I had it far enough in advance to be able to.
We can only go as fast as we can go.
Thank you, and I appreciate that that space of grace. So,
Of course.
all right, so in terms of what we are currently doing then, I just want to clarify, because we need a quick vote on what we want to present to the board on Monday. Okay.
Okay.
Because we do have a placeholder for the board. So we will be presenting that we had a discussion around A1 and that is not actually being repealed, even though it's listed in statute for us to review. That we had discussion around, we had a lot of questions to provide to SDE for our next meeting. That we are considering that initial is praxis plus alternative routes to certification, right? That professional is a master's degree. The only difference currently is that, we're thinking that maybe no timeline or no requirement of a master's. And then Shannon was going to look at that, the studies around that. And Chloe was going to pull like the notes from last year's committee that we can reference as part of that. That we are asking about cross endorsements. And we had a lot of questions around cross endorsements. We're going to ask SDE to attend our next ad hoc meeting to answer those questions so that we can move the work forward. That we have a CPRL report that condensed down to be specific to the work of this ad hoc committee that we can share with the committee as well, the board, as part of that as well. Does that sound good?
That sounds good.
Yes.
In terms of our deadline, I do believe that our deadline for this is July
July 1.
July 1st, right, 2025. So for our 60-day window, because we're required to submit anything that we do directly to the State Board of Ed and per statute. So our 60-day window on that is, let me go back here. We would want to have, so I was looking at this earlier. So they're having a meeting on July 2nd, the board, the state board. So we would want to have this in by their meeting on May 7th.
May what?
May 7th is the 60 days before for the state board.
Okay.
for the Board of Ed.
Okay.
So our meeting, though, if we want to get our board to approve whatever we're stating and moving forward, it would have to be done in our, so it's May, so that would have to be done in our April meeting. Right? That the expectation is the April meeting. We might be able to add like an extra meeting in April if we need to, like we did when we were approving the package that we were moving forward to the State Department of the Board of Ed the last time in January. But April, either our April meeting or an extra meeting in April would need to be scheduled to finalize what we would put forward to get it in time to the Board of Ed by May 7th. So with that in mind, we're at the beginning of March.
Yep.
Does this time typically work for folks? And if it does, we should probably like think about scheduling our next meeting. Or Chloe, do you want to send out a survey for the next meeting?
I mean, if we can talk about it right now, I know we don't have Jenny on, but I can see. So I don't know if this time.
This time works.
Okay.
So in terms of calendars then, do Wednesdays work for this group at this time? Or is it there a different day that works better?
This day
Wednesdays work.
It just depends on the week. I mean,
sometimes for me too, but yeah, I hear you, Shannon. It can change, but like typically, if at least, especially if I know to block it out ahead of time, of course. And by the way, I just want to say, I found that email I was looking for with some of the language from our dean's meeting. If you want to review it before we exit, I did find it.
I can't the 19th, but of March.
So what about the 12th currently? Would the 12th work for everybody?
Yes.
I cannot do that.
So with that in mind, and because we don't know from Jenny, why don't we go ahead and put out a survey then? Does 3:30 though work for everybody, like as a time frame, so that way we can just put dates out as opposed to times?
It's better for me, yeah.
Okay.
I could do the 19th. I mean, if we want to look to the next week.
Elsa won't be able to come to that, and
Oh.
we can try to get as much of this, because it's 6 sections that we have to do for this particular one. And with us being in March, that gives us only about 6 to 8 weeks, really.
You know what? I have a banquet at 5. If I could leave at 4:45, I can.
Yeah, I mean, I think like for 3:30 to 4:30, like hour chunks, if they go over a bit, then
Then that can
that's.
Yeah.
So, so Chloe, let's just go ahead with that 3:30 to 4:30 time, and maybe just put out dates in a survey that might work for everyone. All right, and then on the Monday meeting, I'll ask if anybody else would like to join this group to kind of, put it out to about 5 people to help with quorum in the future, and see if we can get somebody who's interested in being the chair. I mean, I can continue to do it, but I'd love to like give somebody else the opportunity to have that leadership in the board. So, all right, so sounds good. I think we've got a really good start going. I think Chloe has sent that out to you guys already, shared the document.
I didn't.
Or no? Oh, sorry.
I can. Yeah.
That's fine. And then there's something that you wanted to share really quickly, Jen, before we
Yes.
a motion.
I found this email that I was looking for at the beginning. So like Shannon was saying, it is extended. Praxis for cross endorsement praxis is extended to all except, I scrolled past it. Except bilingual elementary ed, integrated early childhood SPED, remedial reading, remedial language arts, school library media, special ed, TESOL. So those would be the areas we'd be looking at. How could we cross endorse a little more easily if possible? And then the other piece was.
Could you copy and paste that list into?
Yes, I just have to download it so I can copy and paste it.
Okay.
And then the other piece was some language here that they were clarifying for us at the dean's meeting about the certifications, initial to provisional. So it's 5 year. Let me make sure I'm reading the right thing here. So much information on this document. Ed levels change, initial cert. Okay. You can have it for a period of 10 years.
Yes.
And then you can renew it up to 3 times, so 3 years. So I guess that would be a total of 3 years. I guess a total of 13 years. That would be my understanding of this language. And that you have to have worked for 5 school year or 50 months. So that's the months requirement, which I couldn't remember.
Mhm.
And then it was the master's degree, but this committee obviously has the ability to make it something else other than a master's degree. So let me download this and I'll pop it in before I sign off.
All right, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you very much.
yeah, I knew I had it somewhere in this gigantic email of mine here.
All right, so Chloe just sent the document that's specific to our work.
Great.
So that will be helpful in like identifying in case you want to look up those particular statutes that each one of those 6 sections speak to in preparation for the next meeting. So at this time then, to honor everybody's time, I'm going to go ahead and take a motion to adjourn if there's nothing else to discuss at this time. Okay, I'll take a motion.
Oh, sorry.
For adjournment.
Second,
all in favor?
good
All right.
meeting.
All
Thank you.
set. Thank you very much, everyone. I look forward to continued work.
Thank
Thank you. I'm just going to pop this in